My name is Rowan Delaire, 26 years old. The night it all split open, I was standing in the kitchen with my coat still buttoned, the air heavy with the faint scent of mint tea and floor polish. My sister leaned against the counter, arms folded, her face twisted into that smug grin she had mastered since childhood. She looked straight at me and said, almost sing-song, "You have no place in our family." She delivered it with such syrupy sweetness that for a half second I almost believed she was doing me a favor. Mom didn't miss a beat. She sat at the table, steam curling from her mug, and murmured, "She's right." Dad didn't even lift his eyes from his phone. "Yeah," he muttered, thumb scrolling. "Maybe it's better this way." For a heartbeat, the whole kitchen went quiet except for the soft ticking of the wall clock. I stared at the three of them, trying to figure out if they had rehearsed this together. I could almost picture my sister coaching them upstairs, planting the words in their mouths like a director feeding actors their lines. I let out a breath that felt more like a laugh. "Guess I'll save you the trouble." I yanked my jacket from the back of the chair and slipped it on. No one moved. My sister's grin widened. Mom looked down into her tea as though the leaves would spell out something easier than this moment. Dad never raised his head. So I walked out. The door clicked behind me, not slammed, just closed, with a softness that felt absurd after what had just been said. The strange part was, it didn't sting the way they probably hoped it would. I'd learned years ago that love and support were currencies my parents reserved for my sister. She basked in it, the golden child soaking up every ray. I had built my life without it, my own friends, my own job, my own little pockets of peace. But what did sting, faintly, was how easy they made it look. No hesitation, no second thoughts, not even the courtesy of a, "Wait, let's talk." Just silence that sounded like permission. That night I stayed at my best friend Kayla's place. We opened a bottle of cheap wine, and when I told her what had happened, she nearly spit her drink. "She probably thinks she's the queen now," she said. We laughed, loud and a little bitter, imagining my sister in a crown made of borrowed approval. Kayla was right. I was better off. Still, the absurdity clung to me like static. 2 days later, I came home to find suitcases by the front door. They were leaving for a family vacation I hadn't even known they were planning. My sister floated around the house, giving directions like a conductor, her voice rising with theatrical laughter, eyes darting to me as if waiting for me to break. I didn't. Finally, she turned to me with that smirk. "So you're just going to sit here all alone? What are you going to do without us?" I smiled calmly, the kind of calm I knew would annoy her more than any outburst. "I hope they take you to a hospital for the mentally ill on this trip. Maybe they'll have room for Mom and Dad, too." Her face went crimson, then blotchy. She exploded, shrieking like I'd struck her. My parents rushed to her side, wrapping her up as if I were the aggressor. "You're so cruel," Mom hissed. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" I shrugged, because I'd rather be sane. When they left, I felt nothing but relief. The house exhaled. For the first time in years, silence wasn't a punishment. I curled up on the couch with popcorn and binge-watched the shows I never got to enjoy without criticism humming around me. For 2 days, it was bliss. No yelling, no passive-aggressive sighs, no sister prowling for attention. I played music too loud, danced in the kitchen, ate cereal for dinner without anyone sneering. Then the call started. At 10 a.m. on the third morning, I was flipping pancakes when my phone buzzed. Her name flashed. I rolled my eyes, let it ring out. 5 minutes later, another call, then another. By the time I sat down with my plate, she had called 7 times. When the 8th call came, I answered just to shut her up. "What?" My voice was sharp enough to cut. Finally, her voice shrieked through the line, high-pitched and panicked. "I've been calling you for hours. Why didn't you answer?" "Because I don't care," I said flatly. "What do you want?" "We're in trouble," she said, her voice wobbling. "Define trouble." I leaned back against the counter, the pancake cooling in front of me. She hesitated. That hesitation was a tell. My sister never hesitated unless she was about to lie. We got robbed." I raised an eyebrow, though she couldn't see it. "You got robbed? On your perfect little family vacation?" "Yes," she snapped. "Some guy stole all our money. Mom and Dad are freaking out. We're stuck here with nothing. I didn't know who else to call." "Why not call Mike?" I asked, mentioning her husband. Silence, heavy and loaded. "Oh," I said, a grin spreading. You didn't tell him, did you? Did the guy steal more than your money? Shut up, she hissed. This isn't funny. I laughed, low and sharp. It's hilarious. Let me guess. You went somewhere you shouldn't have, trusted someone you shouldn't, and now you're too embarrassed to admit it. Am I close? Another pause, then, are you going to help us or not? I tapped my fork against the plate, savoring the sound. Let me think about it. In the meantime, maybe you can ask one of those locals you love to charm for help. I'm sure they'd be happy to assist. She started yelling, but I hung up before the words could form. For the next few hours, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Calls, texts, voicemails. Mom's voice trying to coat guilt over desperation. I thought you were better than this. We're your family. Dad's shorter, terser. You're humiliating us. 15 missed calls stacked one after another like a tower of need. I couldn't stop laughing. Family, I muttered to myself. Didn't you just tell me I had no place here? I typed one sentence to my sister. Sorry, but I'm just a roommate, remember? Then I switched my phone off and dropped it on the couch. That night, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. I padded over to the door to double-check the locks, a new habit forming in my chest. On my way back, I glanced at the doorbell camera. At 11:37 p.m., the feed showed my sister outside, alone. Except she wasn't. She leaned toward a man standing just out of frame, her mouth moving fast, her eyes darting toward the camera before she tilted her hair to block the angle. The screen went dark. They returned the way storms do. No warning beyond a shift in air pressure, then doors slamming, voices pitched too high. I heard the car doors first, then Mom's running commentary about luggage, then Dad's mutter threading through it like a low drum. My sister entered last, flushed and vibrating, her suitcase clacking behind her like an applause track. Mike followed, carrying 2 more bags, and the kind of silence that means you've been arguing for hours without landing anywhere. He nodded at me in the hall, a small, tired acknowledgement that felt like a secret handshake. My sister clocked it and set her jaw. You're unbelievable, she snapped, jabbing a finger at me. We needed you, and you ignored us. I leaned against the wall, arms folded. I didn't know roommates were supposed to finance each other's holidays. Dad glared. This isn't a joke. We were stranded in a foreign country. Do you know how humiliating it was to ask for help? Humiliating like being told I don't belong in my own family? I said, eyebrows up, because I'm still catching up on how that feels. Mom heaved an exasperated sigh, the kind that implies she's performing patience for an audience. Why do you always have to be so difficult? We're your family. Families help each other. Now we're family? I laughed. Last week I was a burden. Did the definition update while you were gone? My sister had been pacing the living room like a caged actor waiting for her cue. She whirled. You're such a child. Do you have any idea how much stress you caused us? Do you even care? I met her stare and held it. No, because you don't care about me. You never have. You've made a sport of it, and now you want me to pick up the tab for your talent. For once, she didn't have a comeback. The room tilted toward a silence that made the refrigerator hum sound accusatory. Mike cleared his throat. She's right. All eyes swung to him. My sister's face slackened, then hardened. You're taking her side? I'm not taking sides, he said, voice steady. I'm saying you can't treat someone like nothing and expect them to come running when you're in trouble. Dad's phone disappeared into his pocket for the first time since he'd walked in. Mom's mouth parted like the word no had just learned how to be said in her house. My sister pivoted to me, eyes sharp. You think you're so above everyone. You'd still be crawling back if we locked you out. You know you would. That was the moment I felt something click into place, like a door catching a latch. I'm moving out, I said. Tonight. Mom blinked. Done? What does that mean? It means I'm done, I said, calm like water that looks shallow and isn't. I'll pack now. I'll be at Grandma's. My sister rolled her eyes. You've said that before. This time I mean it. I reached for the throw blanket on the couch, folded it into a neat square, and put it aside as if tidying the scene for the next act. You don't get to keep staging me as the problem. Get a new prop. Upstairs, I hauled out boxes that still smelled faintly of the last move I'd never finished. Each drawer I emptied felt like untangling the hem of a too-tight dress. In the top dresser, a stray receipt fluttered free and landed face up. Cash-only lounge, date stamped, the same night she'd sobbed about being robbed. A phone notification pinged as if on cue, an unknown number flashing across the screen with a single letter for a contact, N. It hovered, vanished. I slid the receipt into my back pocket without thinking. Things that don't fit the story have a way of becoming the story. Kayla texted, "Want help? Box tape and petty commentary ready." I smiled and told her I had it. This wasn't a spectacle, it was extraction. When I carried the first box down, Mike was by the doorway, hands in his pockets, eyes flicking toward the stairs where my sister had barricaded herself with her noise. "You good?" he asked quietly. "I will be," I said. "You?" He considered. His voice dropped to the exact register of truth. "Working on it." I loaded the trunk, ran a final lap through the house that had called me burden, and then begged to be my blood again. My sister appeared at the top of the stairs just long enough to let a new sneer find its mark. "Don't come crawling back when you realize no one wants you." I lifted my last box, the one with framed photos and the plant I'd kept somehow alive through winters of indifference. If I crawl, it won't be toward here. Grandma's porch light was already on when I pulled up, amber and soft, a lighthouse for small, important boats. She hugged me at the door and said, without ceremony, "Room's ready. Cookies are cooling." In the kitchen, she set a plate down, patted the chair beside her, and waited for the words to find me. They did. When I told her everything, she only shook her head once. "Some people confuse attention with oxygen," she said, pouring me milk like I was 8 again. "When you stop supplying it, they call it cruelty." I slept like a window left open to good weather. Morning was a plaid robe, the smell of toast, the soft scratch of Grandma's pen, labeling a folder, "Keep." She pressed it into my hands. "For paperwork, copies of everything. If their stories change, your facts won't." We filled it together, slow and methodical, my lease termination notice, a list of what I'd taken, photos of the room left clean. By afternoon, my phone had regained signal enough for its old habits. 3 texts from Mom stacked like little soldiers. "Can we talk? Where are you staying? We need to settle what you took," as if affection were inventory. I put the phone face down. Grandma slid a coaster under it like she was tucking in a child. Around dinner, a new message arrived from a number I didn't recognize. Just a single line. "Call me when you can. M. Mike." My pulse ticked uneven. I typed back, "Is everything okay?" The typing dots came and went twice before he sent, "Later. Not text safe." That night, the house creaked like old ships do when they're content with the ocean. I made a list in my head. Change addresses, box Kayla's spare keys back, forward my mail, buy new towels that never belonged to that bathroom with its disapproving mirror. Then I stopped making lists because lists are how I trick myself into thinking control and peace are the same thing. The next morning, I returned for 2 more boxes. The house felt vacuumed of sound, as if it were holding its breath until I left. My sister's door was closed. Music thumped behind it with all the subtlety of a plea. On the console by the entryway, a nail file lay beside another receipt from the same cash-only lounge. My fingers hovered, then retreated. I'd already taken enough. Besides, some evidence gathers itself without being invited. As I was lifting the last box, Mike came down the stairs with a smaller one of books. "I can carry it," I said. "I know," he said. He adjusted the box like the act of carrying it was a conversation he'd been needing to have. "You're doing the right thing." We stood on the front steps like 2 people taking a smoke break from a fire that hadn't been declared yet. "She called me from a number I don't know last night," he said, voice pitched to travel only as far as my ear. "Said not to tell anyone, and then she asked if I knew anyone named N." He tried to shrug it off, but his mouth couldn't lie. I told her no. "Do you?" I asked. His silence answered. I put the box in my trunk and closed it gently, a quiet punctuation mark at the end of a sentence I'd been writing for years. "Take care of yourself," I said. "You too," he said, then added, hesitating, "and thanks for not making this uglier." "I didn't need to," I said. "It handles ugly on its own." On the way back to Grandma's, my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I let it go. It rang again, and again. Unknown numbers are a genre. Spam, sales, or something you've outgrown. On the 4th call, I answered. "Is this Rowan Dallaire?" a man asked. His voice was formal and unhurried. "Yes," I said, careful. "Who's asking?" "This is Detective Ramirez with the county police," he said. "We're following up on a report involving your family." My chest went cold and still. "What kind of report?" "Your sister alleges you made threats against her safety before she left on vacation," he said, tone steady like a metronome. "I'd like to ask you a few questions." For a second, the room tilted, the kitchen chair under me, the cool of the table against my forearm, the sound of Grandma rinsing cups at the sink. Then everything righted itself. "She's lying," I said. Not defensive, just true. "I understand this is upsetting," he said. And to his credit, it didn't sound like a script. "We have to investigate each report. Could you come by the station tomorrow morning?" Grandma turned at the sink, eyebrows lifting in a question I didn't yet know how to answer. I met her eyes and found steady ground there. "I'll be there," I told him. "Thank you," he said. "Ask for me at the front desk. Ramirez." We hung up. Grandma set a towel down and dried her hands carefully, like the act required ceremony. "Well," she said, gentle but crisp. "Looks like someone is trying to build a story bigger than the facts." "Then we'll bring bigger facts," I said, tapping the folder she'd labeled Keep. Outside, late sun stretched the yard into long, truth-telling shadows. My phone buzzed once, an unknown number again, and fell still. I let it. Because some days ask you to defend yourself, and some days you only have to show up with the right papers. Tomorrow would be both. The police station smelled faintly of disinfectant and burnt coffee. I walked in with Grandma at my side, her cane tapping like a metronome of steadiness against the tile floor. The woman at the front desk glanced up when I gave my name, then called into the back. A few minutes later, Detective Ramirez appeared, tall, sharp-eyed, and younger than I expected. His expression wasn't hostile, just measured, like he was used to sorting lies from truths without letting either stick to his face. "Rowan?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded once. "Let's talk." He led us into a small interview room. 4 beige walls, a table with faint scratches, 2 chairs. Grandma settled in beside me like she had been called in as counsel. Ramirez sat across, a folder in his hands. He opened it slowly, flipping through a few sheets. "Your sister Alana," he began, "filed a report. She claims you threatened her before the family vacation." I stared at him, then let out a small laugh. Not sharp, not rude, just disbelief cracking through. "Threatened her? With what exactly? My existence?" His mouth twitched like he wanted to smile, but wouldn't. That's the problem. When we asked her for specifics, she couldn't provide any. Her story shifted. First, she said you threatened her over the phone, then it was in person. Then she said she couldn't remember the wording. Each time, the details changed. Grandma folded her hands on the table. "Sounds like someone playing dress-up with the truth." Ramirez tilted his head respectfully toward her before continuing. "The truth is, this doesn't meet our threshold for further investigation. We're closing the complaint, but..." He leaned forward slightly. "I wanted to warn you. People who file false reports like this, they don't stop easily. Sometimes they escalate." His eyes locked with mine, steady and clear. "You should be careful. Keep documentation of your interactions. Don't be alone with her if you can help it." I nodded slowly. "I've been keeping records, dates, screenshots, copies." "Good." He closed the folder. "If she tries this again, you'll have proof, and that matters." For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of the fluorescent lights. Then Ramirez stood. "That's all for now. Thank you for coming in." Outside, the air felt cooler, cleaner. Grandma slipped her arm through mine as we walked back to the car. "I told you," she said softly. "She has no shame, but lies are heavy things. They crush the ones who carry them." I wanted to believe that. But in my family, lies had wings. They flew far before they ever fell. When we got back to Grandma's house, the mailbox held an envelope, my name scrawled across the front in unfamiliar handwriting. Grandma handed it to me with a raised eyebrow. "Came this morning." I tore it open at the kitchen table. Inside was a single page, written in uneven script. "I need to talk to you. It's important. Call me. Mike." I stared at it, heart thudding. My sister's husband. The only one in that house who had ever nodded at me like I was more than scenery. Grandma leaned over my shoulder. "What does he want?" "I don't know," I said, folding the letter back. "But it must be serious if he didn't want to text." Against my better judgment, I dialed the number scrawled at the bottom. He answered on the first ring. "Thank God," he said, his voice tight, breathless. "I didn't know if you'd call." "What's going on, Mike?" My tone was cautious, edged with suspicion. "It's your sister," he said, and the way his voice dropped made the hair on my arms stand up. "She's hiding something. Something big." My throat went dry. "What do you mean, hiding?" He hesitated, and I could almost hear him running a hand through his hair. "I don't want to say too much over the phone. Can we meet in person? Somewhere away from her?" Every instinct screamed no. But something in his voice, frayed, urgent, stripped of pretense, made me pause. Fine, I said, but this better be good. We agreed on a diner outside town, neutral ground. I hung up and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the folded letter. Grandma watched me carefully. You don't owe him anything, she said. I know, I replied, but if he's reaching out to me of all people, it must be worse than we think. That night, sleep eluded me. I kept replaying Ramirez's warning, my sister's voice insisting she was robbed, the way she had stared into the doorbell camera whispering to someone just out of frame, threads, fraying, tangling. By dawn, I knew I'd go to the diner. Not for her, not for him, for the truth. The diner sat just off the highway, the kind of place where the neon sign never fully worked, and the coffee tasted like it had been simmering since last week. Rain streaked the windows, turning the view outside into watery smudges of headlights and trees. Mike was already there when I walked in, hunched over a mug, his eyes scanning the door every few seconds. He looked older than the last time I'd seen him, hollowed out, jaw tight, like he hadn't slept in days. He motioned me over quickly, relief flashing across his face. Thanks for coming, he said, voice low, urgent. Talk, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands wrapped around his mug as if it were the only thing holding him steady. The robbery, it wasn't random. She planned it. For a moment I thought I'd misheard. Planned it? Yes. His voice sharpened. She knew the guy. She gave him the money on purpose. She told me it was an investment. Some kind of get-rich scheme. But when I started checking accounts, I realized she's been draining mine too. He shoved a crumpled printout across the table. Bank statements with withdrawals that didn't make sense, all marked cash. I stared at the paper. You're saying she staged the whole thing? He nodded, eyes bleak. And that police report against you? That was her distraction. She thought if you were in trouble, no one would look too closely at her. I sat back, the vinyl seat squeaking. A laugh slipped out. Not humor, just disbelief. That's a new low, even for her. Mike shook his head. You don't understand. She's in serious debt. Credit cards, payday loans, even borrowing from people I've never heard of. She's hiding all of it. I think she's desperate. Desperate enough to make me her scapegoat, I said bitterly. He didn't argue. His silence was answer enough. Why are you telling me this? I asked finally. Because I can't trust her. And I can't go to your parents. They'll defend her no matter what. You're the only one who sees her for what she really is. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of something unexpected. Pity. Not for her, but for him. For being trapped in her orbit, dragged under by the weight of her lies. I'll think about it, I said. But if you want my help, you can't cover for her anymore. No more excuses. No more looking away. I know, he said, his voice rough. I'm ready. But something in his eyes told me he wasn't sure. The next morning, he showed up at Grandma's unannounced. His face was pale, his hair uncombed, his shirt wrinkled like he'd thrown it on without care. He looked like a man unraveling. I told her I knew everything, he said the moment I opened the door. She lost it, screamed at me, denied it, then admitted it. Now she's threatening to leave. Take everything with her. Grandma appeared behind me, steady as ever. What do you want Rowan to do about it? She asked bluntly. She's dragging your parents into it, Mike said, desperation flaring. She's convinced them I'm the problem. They're coming over to confront me, and I need someone to back me up. Every muscle in me tensed. This wasn't my battle. I had spent my whole life cleaning up her wreckage. I was free now. But then I saw his face, drawn, defeated, a man begging not for rescue, but for a witness. Fine, I said, but this is the last time. When we arrived at his house, the tension hit like a wall. My parents were already there, perched stiffly on the couch. My sister paced the room, talking fast, her voice pitched high with urgency. She stopped cold when she saw me. What is she doing here? She demanded. I invited her, Mike said firmly. She deserves to be here. Her face went crimson. You traitor, she spat. I stepped forward. Let's skip the theatrics. Mike knows about the robbery. He knows about the money you handed over. And I know about the phony police report. Mom gasped. What is she talking about? She's lying, my sister snapped, her voice cracking. She's just trying to turn you against me. Stop, Mike said sharply. He pulled a folder from his bag and dropped it onto the coffee table. Papers spilled out. Bank statements, screenshots of texts, even a copy of the complaint she had filed against me. Proof. The room went silent except for the clock ticking on the wall. My parents leaned forward, scanning the pages. Dad's lips parted, his face drained of color. This can't be true, he said hoarsely. Tell me this isn't true. My sister's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the kind that softened hearts. They were loud, messy, exaggerated, the kind meant for theater. I only did it because I was desperate, she wailed. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You didn't mean to get mugged? I asked, arms crossed. Didn't mean to drain his accounts? Didn't mean to lie to the police? Which part exactly was the accident? Shut up, she screamed, whipping toward me. This is all your fault. If you had just left when I told you, none of this would have happened. A laugh escaped me, sharp and clean. Classic. You commit the crime and I'm the villain. Dad stood, his face pale and unreadable. We have to go, he said to Mom, pulling her up by the arm. What about her? Mom whispered, glancing at my sister. She's not our problem anymore, he said, voice flat as stone. My sister froze, tears still clinging to her cheeks. What? You're just going to leave me? You did this to yourself, Dad said. I can't help you anymore. For the first time in my life, I watched my parents walk away from her. They left without another word, the front door closing with a thud that felt like a verdict. My sister turned on me, her face twisted with rage. Are you happy now? She hissed. Ecstatic, I said. And just so you know, if you ever try something like this again, I won't just walk away. I'll make sure you pay for it. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She stormed out, the door slamming so hard the picture frames rattled. Mike exhaled, long and shaky. Thank you, he said. I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have figured it out, I told him. You're stronger than you think. But inside, I wasn't sure if that was true. Weeks passed like a slow thaw after a brutal winter. Mike filed for divorce. My parents retreated into silence, as if pretending none of it had happened would erase the wreckage. And my sister, well, the last I heard, she was drifting between friends' couches, spinning new stories about why she'd been wronged. For the first time in my life, the chaos wasn't mine to manage. It felt strange at first, like stepping off a boat after years at sea and realizing the ground doesn't move. I stayed with Grandma longer than I'd planned. Her little cottage became a refuge. Tea in the evenings, the radio humming in the background, the scent of lavender from her garden drifting through the open windows. I saved money, got a part-time job nearby, and started imagining a life that belonged only to me. But freedom, I was learning, isn't just absence, it's presence. It's the quiet realization at 2 a.m. that no one can text you 15 times demanding your help. It's sipping coffee without glancing at your phone. It's building routines from scratch. One morning, while the kettle hissed on the stove, Grandma handed me a letter. Came for you while you were out, she said. The envelope was plain, the handwriting familiar. Mike. Inside, just one line. I need to talk to you. It's important. Call me. I stared at the words, heart tightening. We'd said our goodbyes. What could be left? Against my better judgment, I dialed. He answered on the first ring. Thank God, he said, his voice ragged. I didn't know if you'd even read it. What's going on, Mike? It's your sister. His tone was low, tense. She's hiding something else, something big. I almost laughed. You'll have to be more specific. No, he said quickly. I don't want to say over the phone. Can we meet in person? I hesitated. After everything, the last thing I wanted was to be dragged back into her orbit, but there was something in his voice, raw, desperate, that stopped me. Fine, I said, but this better be good. We met at a diner off a rural road, the kind of place where the waitress calls you hun without looking up. He looked worse than before, hollow eyes, hands trembling slightly as he stirred his coffee. She's been draining my accounts again, he said without preamble. Even after everything, I confronted her. She threatened to disappear. And then he paused, glancing around the diner like someone might be listening. She hinted about you. Me? He nodded. Said if she goes down, she's taking everyone with her. Said she's got things she can say about you. I stared at him, stunned. There's nothing to say about me. He gave me a weary look. Since when has the truth stopped her? We sat in silence for a moment, the clatter of dishes and low murmur of other diners filling the space. She's not done, he said finally. She's scared, and when she's scared, she lashes out. I thought you should know. I pressed my palms to my eyes, a low laugh escaping. Of course she's not done. Mike leaned forward, voice softer. I'm sorry, Rowan. You don't deserve this. None of it. For a second, something inside me cracked. Years of holding the line, of bracing for impact. I inhaled slowly, steadied myself. You're right, I said. I don't. When I left the diner, the sky had turned a deep, bruised gray. Rain smelled like metal. I drove back to Grandma's with a strange sense of clarity. My sister wasn't just reckless. She was dangerous. And the only way to be free of her was to draw a line she couldn't cross. That night, I opened my laptop and began typing. Not a post, not yet, just a document. Dates, screenshots, texts. A timeline of every lie, every manipulation, every false emergency that turned out to be a party or a shopping spree. I'd kept mental records for years, but now I laid them out, cold and factual. The truth didn't need embellishment. It was damning enough. Grandma found me at the kitchen table, the glow of the screen casting my face in pale light. "Are you sure you want to go down this road?" she asked gently. "I'm tired of roads," I said without looking up. "I want walls." She nodded, understanding. "Then make sure they're strong." I saved the file under a bland name, backed it up twice. If she came after me again, legally, publicly, financially, I would release it, not out of vengeance, out of self-defense. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "You think you've won. Watch yourself." No name, but I didn't need one. I blocked it without replying. Weeks later, I moved into my own apartment, a small second-floor walk-up with creaky floors and a window that looked out over a line of sycamores. I bought a second-hand couch, hung up a thrifted print of a lighthouse, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was building something solid. One quiet morning, as I watched sunlight creep across the floor, my phone buzzed again. This time it was from Mike. "Just wanted to say thanks again. I hope you're doing well." I smiled, typed back, "Doing great. Hope you are too." No drama, no explosions, just words. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the next disaster. I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was living on my own terms. A year later, I woke up in my own apartment to the pale glow of sunrise spilling across the floorboards. The air smelled like fresh coffee and paint from the bookshelf I'd built the weekend before. My life had grown into something I barely recognized, quiet, deliberate, mine. No frantic calls in the middle of the night, no guilt-tripped bank transfers, no footsteps pacing outside my door. Just me and the soft thrum of a city that didn't know my family's drama or care about it. I sat on the balcony with a mug warming my hands, scrolling through a countdown app on my phone. 10 days until my trip. Not just any trip, the trip. Hawaii. The one they stole from me a year ago, turned into poolside cocktails, and mocking captions. Now it was mine again, paid for with money I earned, and saved without anyone clawing at it. The flights were direct. The Airbnb had a balcony over the ocean, and I'd booked a volcano tour just because I could. I was about to set my phone aside when the mail slot clattered. A letter slid through. Actual paper, in an envelope with careful cursive handwriting. I picked it up, heart skipping when I saw who it was from. Grandma. Inside was a single sheet, her script neat and steady. "I want you to know I read everything. I saw the posts, the screenshots, the truth you carried alone for so long. I'm sorry it took me this long to understand the weight you've borne. You deserve that vacation. You deserve peace, even if it means peace without us. No guilt, no plea for reconciliation. Just recognition, quiet and clear." I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my travel journal. For a moment, my throat tightened. Not from anger, but from relief. Someone in that tangled web had finally seen me. Not as a scapegoat, not as a problem, but as a person. The days that followed moved in soft rhythms. I packed sunscreen and swimsuits, chose books to bring on the plane, watered the plant that had somehow survived my chaotic years. I didn't hear from my parents. Not a text, not a voicemail. My sister remained a ghost, flitting between borrowed couches and burned bridges. Even Mike, who once leaned on me for truth, had gone quiet, building a life that wasn't tangled with hers anymore. And me? I was finally free. On the night before my flight, I stood by the window watching the city lights flicker like constellations. My suitcase leaned by the door, zipped, ready. The silence around me wasn't tense anymore. It was gentle, expansive, earned. They had called me a loser, told me I didn't belong, tried to frame me as unstable, unworthy, unwanted. But as I watched the sky darken, I realized something simple and devastating. They had lost me. And I wasn't going back.